This is a Muscle Cat Media production.
Welcome back to Baseball Expats on what is a very rainy, gloomy, wintry Monday evening in Sydney. And because of that, it's a two-man weave again. Eric and I have been on and off. But the glue guy in the Baseball Expats, who's even done a little bit of producing for us today, our man Spoon is here. Solid as a rock you are, Spoon.
I do my best. I've fronted up. You know, I'm one of those underskilled kind of utility players that is known for being a good dugout guy, and that's how I keep landing on new teams. You know, like I might get DFA'd, but I get picked straight back up purely because of my ability to show up every day. And if I've got nothing else, I've got consistency.
Well, with the amount of injuries that we've had here at the Baseball Expats, I don't know that we'd been able to field a team without you. So, like I said, glue guy. It's important to have the glue guy in any sort of team, and Spoon has definitely been that for us. The reason I bring the rain up is because Eric is currently covering the Australian Little League Championships. The winner, of course, goes to Williamsport in August, and he shared a clip with us earlier today that is something I don't think I've ever seen before at any level of baseball. It was a check swing inside the park home run. It truly was. I'm sure it exists somewhere on baseball.com.au's social media feeds, but it was truly a sight to behold, and I think something that I've never seen, and I don't know that I'll ever see again, Spoon.
Yeah, and I think not only was it an inside the parker, I'd be amazed if it wasn't one of the first inside the parkers that hit three different fielders' gloves, because I think the second baseman got like a little bit of leather on it, and then it split two outfielders who both seemed to kind of like deflect it a little bit. So yeah, it passed a fair bit of traffic, and it was on a mission, that ground ball.
Yeah, Eric's been, obviously, as he always does, he's been doing great work covering the Little League Championships, and that's sort of the reason why that he's not here today. We won't bag him out because this time he has a legitimate excuse. While he's been doing that, plenty's been going on in the big league, Spoon. What sort of caught your eyes in the last week or so?
The first thing is a stark realization that when we got together on Friday, I may have thought that the D-backs had turned the corner. What it's become clear to me is that the D-backs didn't change anything. It's the Braves that were the problem, because they've gone on to then be swept again. So all of a sudden there was nothing impressive about sweeping them. I think they're now 10 games under 500. They've kept losing. And it's one of those ones where when you zoom right in onto a game or a series, you go, were we good or were they bad? The D-backs then went and got swept again, back to 3 games under 500. So foolish me for looking at things with my D-backs glasses on, declaring us back, revived, whatever it is. It's actually the Braves who are doomed, and we're not far behind them. That said, I think the news this week that Corbin Burns is going for Tommy John surgery probably just sucked a little bit of life out of that team. Yeah. You can go and have those miraculous wins and all of that, but that was while there was still a 50-50 chance around Corbin Burns. They put him on the 15-day IL. He was getting a second opinion. There wasn't really anything that said it was definitely Tommy John. And even the sort of interviews he did afterwards, he was like, nothing popped. It just kind of felt like tightness. I think as soon as you realize that your true ace is out for this year and a lot of next year, your other ace is no longer the guy you thought he was and he's leaving. I think it's quite hard to sort of front up again after that. And it now does just truly seem like probably too much for the D-backs. So I come here today not with, frustration or anything like that, but more acceptance.
Do you think that it changes how the D-backs approach the offseason with Zach Gallen? Because he hasn't necessarily had a great year as a contract year. I think you mentioned it maybe a couple of months ago that if he continued, well, not a couple of months ago because the season's only been going for a couple of months, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when we spoke about it, the way Corbin Burns was pitching so well and Gallen had kind of gotten off to a rocky start, up and down. Do you feel like the fact that the ace in Burns is now out for the next 12 to 18 months and Zach Gallen's having a contract year and hasn't been the best contract year, do they get him at a discount for a limited amount of years? Is it something they even approach if they know that they've got all that money in Corbin Burns and they're not going to have him next year? So how do the D-backs in your mind kind of maneuver this, because it is, look, they have a good team. They have a team ability of making a run in the playoffs, but they just sort of keep getting these bad luck instances happening. And then when you have Gallen there, he could get big money, or maybe he goes for, a little bit less in a shorter contract year to then get the big contract after. How do you see that playing out with the D-backs?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, if you look historically for a little bit of context, the few times that the D-backs have tried to swing for a big free agent starting pitcher, it's gone horribly. So Greinke was sort of the start of that, and he was actually probably the best of the lot. You look at what they did with Mad Bum after he left the Giants, it was a disaster. They went out and got Jordan Montgomery. That's been a disaster. Corbin Burns was the first one who was actually looking like he was pitching well, and now, the guy who's never had any injury issues his whole career gets his first Tommy John surgery. So I think there's an element of just bad luck there. I don't know how much that changes an owner's appetite around spending on pitching when there's this much of a trend here. The interesting thing about the Corbin Burns contract is it's a 6-year deal with a player opt-out after 2 years. So where it may be potentially, as horrible as the circumstance is, works in the D-backs' favor is that he was almost pitching so well that if he kept that up this year, kept that up next year, he potentially opts out and then goes and gets an even bigger bag from someone else. I think if he's now coming back in 12-ish months and he gets, half a season next year where he's on a limited workload, there's no way he can opt out and trust that he's going to get a bigger/better deal or with a higher AAV than he's got with the 4-year sort of deal remaining with the D-backs. So in a weird sense, it's probably one of the final nails in the coffin for this season. It could end up looking back in 3 or 4 years if he, pitches and wins a Cy Young Award or is a sort of October superstar for the D-backs, and you look back and go, that was a sliding doors moment. With the Gallen part, I think it's now absolutely a better chance that the D-backs bring him back in some capacity, because if he goes and signs a 6 to 7 year deal like he was originally probably hoping for, it's not going to be anywhere near the money that he would have been expecting. Is there a case for he signs somewhere for 2 to 3 years and Arizona could make sense for that, and a prove it sort of deal, or he takes a deal with a lot of opt-outs and then goes and tests the market after ideally getting back to the level he was at? The problem I think is, I'm not sure Arizona is the place he would even do that. Firstly, they hired Kaplan, the former Phillies assistant pitching coach, who seems to have made every single one of the pitchers on this team worse, both bullpen guys and starting pitching. So he's probably losing a little bit of faith as a pitcher himself in the ability to develop and work on some of these things. There's also all those, ridiculous quotes I've referenced about how his breaking stuff doesn't work in the desert and all this kind of like weird meteorologist stuff. Whether that's an excuse for it or it's something he believes, I don't know. But if it's something he believes, I don't see why his prove it deal would be here as opposed to like, dude, go and do a 1 year prove it deal with the Guardians. They'll turn you into absolutely anything, right? Like go to a team or the Tampa Bay Rays or something like that. Like if it's about taking a little less money now in the bid to secure more money later, I don't see where the D-backs fit into that as either a short-term or a long-term fit. They'll obviously offer something. It won't be probably what he wants. And if he's going for less money than he expects, maybe go to a team that can actually prove that they can develop pitchers, because that's definitely not Arizona.
Well, look, the real shame with the Diamondbacks is because that offense, when they're clicking, you feel like is good enough to, you thought potentially they were a 100-game winning team this year. And at times they have shown that. The amount of games that the bullpen has blown at the back end of games for the D-backs is upsetting. And the other thing that I guess is probably so upsetting for you would be that the Dodgers just aren't necessarily as good as I think everybody thought they would be at this moment in time. 39-27. It's ridiculous to say that, right? They're 12 games above 500, and they're a game ahead of the Padres in that division. They were in St. Louis over the weekend, and I think that in the first 2 games, St. Louis won the first 2 games. They lost today. The Dodgers were something like 0 for 17 with runners in scoring position. And so you really do feel like the NL West is much more wide open than what people thought it would be. Everybody thought it was going to be a great division. It's turned out to be a really good division. You've got the Dodgers, Padres, and Giants all up there. The D-backs are still only 3 games below 500 and have still a pretty favorable schedule for the rest of June. So there is still a little bit of hope, I think, looking from the outside in, as tough as that might be, the inside looking out where you are.
I think what makes me really sad as well, not as a D-backs fan, as a baseball fan, is They've actually done everything you want to see from a small to medium market team. They went to the World Series 2 years ago ahead of schedule, but they were carried by some young guys and some guys who were breaking out that year. And then the owner actually went out and spent money for the first time in a very long time. A lot of teams haven't done that. Like I'm not a massive Kendrick fan as far as what the D-backs owner has done forever. He's still kind of playing some of those typical games with the state about who's going to upgrade the stadium and all of that. But from a pure kind of like pushing the chips in mentality, you really want to see a team go, hey, we're actually good now. This is our window. Let's try and cash in. And it's the same reason the Twins despise their ownership, because they had one of their best seasons ever and then decided to do absolutely nothing with it and go back to just kind of cashing in on some of the shared revenue opportunities. The D-backs for the first time went like, we're going to go out and sign this guy. We're going to trade some prospects. We're actually going to give it a really good go. And on paper, all of the moves have made sense and they just haven't worked. And I think that's really disheartening in a league where there is no payroll and it can be pay to win so much of the time. You might get one crack at it in your decade or whatever it is of fandom of a smaller or medium market team to see all the stars align. Like you said, the good teams aren't as good as you thought they were. Your team's better than you thought they were, and we're going to try and leverage that. All of those things happen. You still don't get the success. It's just kind of like, it's even more of an uphill battle than usual.
Well, speaking about owners, and then also a little bit of Arizona connection, the White Sox came out during the week, and it looks like there is a long-term transition plan for Jerry Reinsdorf to sort of hand over the reins of the White Sox organization. He's been the owner since 1981. It sounds like he has struck a deal, a strange deal. We'll talk about the ins and outs of it in a second, with Justin Ishbia, who I believe owns the Phoenix Suns. Yep. So the way that the timeline has shaked out is that Ishbia gives cash injections now, so for 2025 and 2026, to help out with the debt that the White Sox are facing at the moment. And then Reinsdorf essentially can sell the team at any time between 2029 and 2033. And then if it's not sold by the end of the 2033 season, Ishbia can force a sale after 2034. So I guess what it means is that Reinsdorf is still in charge. It comes as the Sox, I mean, let's face it, are barreling toward another 100-loss season. It would be their third straight. And rightfully, I think some of the reaction to it, both fan-wise and media-wise, has been mixed. I mean, some are seeing Ishbia as kind of this future savior. I mean, anybody who's had to deal with sort of Reinsdorf owning that team for the last 10 years, understandably would be feeling that way. But, others, I guess, probably where the frustration comes from is that there's still this 10-year runway for real change. So does it feel like this too little too late? If really Reinsdorf's not forced to sell for another 10 years, is this even a story? Does it even make a difference? Because essentially he can still do what he wants with that team for the next decade. So I just thought it was a really interesting way of structuring this sale. I mean, there really are two organizations in baseball right now where this needs to happen, the White Sox and the Minnesota Twins. I think everybody agrees that the ownership groups that are in place in both of those two places need to be out. I think Ishbia is a great option, but it just shows, if anything, this is kind of a microcosm of the entire Reinsdorf ownership for the White Sox. To go, I'm going to do what's right eventually, but first I'm going to make it about me until I can get as much out of it as I possibly can, and then the city can have whatever's left. The way that I read this timeline and this structure, the way that this deal's been done, that's how it seems to me. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it reminds me a lot of, I'm in an AFL fantasy football league, and there's a perennial sort of trade pest in the league, guy goes by the name of Chi-Chi. And you always think you have a deal at the start, and then there's about 100 different iterations. And by Sunday night, you're looking at this like super convoluted kind of breakdown of all these clauses and all these ins and all these outs and scenarios, like if this, then that. And it's because both sides, and I'm guilty to that too, both sides neither want to concede that the last offer is the best offer, because then you're kind of winning. So you do these like tiny little what ifs and you cover all the scenarios. You go back and look at it and you're like, how did we get here? Like the starting point was probably completely different. That's what this sort of looks like. And it's crazy that it's a team that needs it so badly, right? Like, I think to your point, if it was a team that's always around the mark, like if this was how the Atlanta Braves were to be sold, right? Because they're publicly ran, they're a listed company. If you saw a team like that being sold under all these kind of conditions, you'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Like this is being treated as a business. It's sort of like there's some debt structure there with different options and outcomes. That would look so much better than like please just kill us, which is what the White Sox are saying. Like, why don't you just let us die? And to have that hope where, 100 things could happen. Like, what it's 2031 or something, right? That's 6 years away. If you go back 6 years ago in Major League Baseball, we were 1 year away from a pandemic that nearly killed the league. Like, so much could happen in that 6 years, not just to the team, but to the sport. There could be expansion opportunities between now and then where, the Ishbia group might just go like, hey, we would rather just have a team in Nashville if a team in Nashville is coming in. So it's a very interesting one where, like, sure, it sounds good on paper. Well, it sounds good on paper in the sense that we've got to wait for it, but it also assumes that both sides are going to be in the exact same position as far as like appetite, financial sort of circumstances in 6 years, which is such a crazy amount of time.
Well, and to basically be there to cover the debt for 2 seasons, but Reinsdorf still having ultimate control over everything that happens up until that 2034 deadline, to me just seems wild. I mean, this is why I think it's crazy, because a guy like Ishbia, the Ishbia group could come in and they have shown with their ownership in Phoenix that they're willing to spend money, that they're willing to own a winner, right? You don't have to worry about them being the Marlins. You don't have to worry about them being the Rockies. If that ownership group comes in, they have shown in their other ventures that they're keen to win. And then so if you're a White Sox fan, it's the ultimate like draw, right? Because it's like, okay, cool. We have this great ownership group that wants to come in and buy and know that they'll put a competitive product on the field, but we may have to wait 10 years for it to happen. So I can imagine as a White Sox fan, it would almost be a non-event for you, because I think the rest of the league is looking at this going, this would be awesome for the White Sox. But I'd love to get a White Sox perspective, White Sox fans' perspective on it, because you would probably almost feel like, okay, cool. This, like, we've heard things like this before, and everything's gone through. Ultimately, as long as Reinsdorf still has his hands on the reins, I think the amount of hope that people have in Chicago on the South Side that the franchise is going to get sold or a deal is going to get done is very little.
And as far as from the new ownership group coming in, the potential damage done to your brand even further in that time frame, like it's like, you've agreed to go and buy someone's car, but the guy you're buying it from gets to drive it for 3 more years. And by the way, he's got like 11 DUIs, and he probably like should not have a license at all because he's prone to going to the pub and having a few too many. But you have to buy the car in whatever condition it's in a few years. So it's an interesting one, especially when, I'd like to understand it from the Ishbia perspective when they were actively seeking the Twins deal, why they sort of shied away from that and locked this in. I'm sure there was a reason for it. I'm not sure we'll ever know. But it's definitely not something I've seen in any sport, let alone baseball.
Well, like you said, it must be that they want so badly to get into Major League Baseball, and you can understand that. And they've got the money to do so, and they want to put together a winner. And, the Twins deal fell through. The other logical deal to make is the White Sox. And I guess if door C, if that's door A and B and door C is new Major League franchise, it's probably not going to happen for another 10 years anyways, right? So if you have this long runway in what you're doing with Chicago, well, I mean, maybe shorter than that, but I mean, they're probably not putting a team on the field before 2030. I wouldn't have thought. And then so I don't know exactly what the what the clauses in this deal are, because I imagine if Reinsdorf can do anything he wants in that time, the Ishbia group probably can as well, right? So it's like, okay, we'll hedge our bets. We'll do this thing with the White Sox. We'll give some money to cover debts in good faith. But if another opportunity comes up to own an expansion franchise, we kind of have an easy out. So it could be that maybe it's working for both parties.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought if you look at, the way hockey's gone with their expansion, they've obviously been sort of driving a lot of this. The other sports are much more sort of relocation based. What we'll probably see next will be NBA. But NBA is such an easy one to do because they don't do the division thing. I mean, they do, but they don't. Like, no one cares who wins a division in basketball. Yeah. It changes absolutely nothing. So you go to 2 conferences of 16 and just like realign the divisions. No one will even know. Like, you could tell me this year the Suns have been playing in a different division. I would have absolutely no idea. I don't know how you go to 32 baseball teams. You probably need to go to, like what football have, which is 8 divisions of 4, and that's going to take like complete realignment. So that it's a little trickier to do that. Yeah. And then again, once they go to 32, you'd think like that's it again for a long term. So yeah, you might be, you might get one crack at this where it's like a Nashville coming in and, I don't know, a second Canada team or something like that. I don't know what the latest sort of speculation is there. And if you don't get that, you're on the sideline for 30 or 40 more years. So, yeah, that could be at least we've got this. At least we've got whatever is left of the White Sox in 6 years as a sort of rotting corpse to start with.
Seen a pretty flash hot rendering for a ballpark in Portland, Oregon, actually. And these pop up once every, 12, 24 months for ownership groups and conglomerates coming together and paying for these renderings to get cities excited. But the one I saw in Portland was actually quite good. I don't know whether or not they could sustain a baseball team, but it was a neat ballpark. Look, from one sort of fledgling team with Sox in their name to another, I idiotically selected the Boston Red Sox potentially to win the AL East this year. And I can probably safely say on the 9th of June that that's not going to happen. But probably the most exciting thing that's happening for them right now is top prospect Roman Anthony has been playing very well in AAA. And Spoon, I don't know if you saw it earlier in the week, but a 497-foot grand slam that's been the longest in affiliated baseball this year. It surpassed any major league homer so far in 2025. The longest home run in the big leagues this year was a 480-foot blast by Mike Trout. So it begs the question, with the Red Sox struggling and Roman Anthony really starting to create quite a bit of buzz, is it time they call them up to the majors? I think I know your answer on that. And B, is it just clearly service time manipulation that we're seeing from the Red Sox, the reason why he's not in the big leagues yet?
Yeah, I think very, very quick tangent. As you know, I'm a name guy, big on names. I think it was in that call on that long home run that I found out that apparently his nickname, or it just was in the video, was the Roman Empire. That is unreal. I just
that is good. I had no idea either.
I finished another rewatch of Spartacus over the weekend at one of my favorite shows ever, and just hearing a guy hit a 500-foot home run and being called the Roman Empire. Amazing. Onto anything that actually matters and sort of relevant to the conversation. I think it's definitely clearly service time manipulation. What's crazy is I stumbled somehow deep onto Boston Red Sox Reddit on this actually, and there were people there making the argument that it's better off that they're not making a wild card spot this year and they get the extra year of service time manipulation of one player, which I think is just so crazy to even sort of think that way, because of how few prospects work out and even fewer actually consistently contribute all the time. Like if he's hot right now, go and help the team right now, right? Because how many guys like your Jared Kelnicks or these guys who are like mashing at AAA, and then you're like, oh, we can't, this is a future Hall of Famer, we can't start the clock too early. You get them up and they're not even what you thought they were regardless. Like the D-backs are having that right now with Jordan Lawler. A lot of teams have sort of had that. You end up being like a quadruple A kind of guy. And I'm not saying that this is what is happening with Roman. I'm saying there's no way to know. So you're so worried about protecting the value of an asset that might not actually be as valuable as you think it is, but you can find out right now. And if you are right that he is what you think he is, the worst that happens is you have to pay him soon because he did what you want him to do. It's just a real sort of flawed argument. I mean, maybe there is some stuff that suggests he's not ready because the D-backs, like I said, had it with Lawler. He was just mashing a 1-something OPS at AAA. He was elevating the ball so easily. He comes up and he sees major league breaking stuff. Everyone called for him to come up. Everyone laughed at the D-backs for not bringing him up. He comes up and he goes like 0 for 22 during his cup of coffee with 19 strikeouts, all on off-speed pitches. So maybe there's some stuff there where it's, the peripherals suggest anything kind of major league breaking-wise is just not going to contribute. But I mean, they're kind of out of contention either way, right? Like just find out what could happen. It's not like there's some superstars kind of holding him out. I don't think it's great for the game to see that. And we're such a unique sport as it is, where you wait so long to see the guys you're looking forward to, right? Like in the NBA, you draft a guy, he's out there. In the NFL, you draft a guy, he's out there, especially if it's, the first, whatever, sort of few rounds of the draft. In baseball, it's just like it's done so different. And when it's already a sport where you're watching every day, there's guys who probably don't deserve to be there. The team is underachieving. These are the kind of things that keep fan bases invested. And I think we spoke a little off air too. The Red Sox are a top payroll, and they're owned by the same group who own Liverpool. This isn't even like a situation with the Pirates or whatever, where they're kind of trying to manipulate service time so that they can stay a bottom 5 payroll and still compete. It kind of, if it is service time manipulation, like I think it is, and you probably think it is, it's even worse that it's coming from one of the biggest sporting brands in the world.
Yeah, and look, I think especially with Boston, like, and we talked about this maybe a month or so ago, like what they did with Christian Campbell. I think it was one of their starters that they did it with as well. Yeah. That's right. Just giving them long-term contracts at very club-friendly cost late in the deal. So it's like they've clearly gone, right, we think you are going to be in 6 years' time probably a $20 million player, but we're going to sign you to 6 years, $60 million right now. Because at the back end of that deal, we're going to be getting good value because we believe in you. And then Christian Campbell, I mean, he's up in the big leagues a year after he was playing college baseball, right? So for something like that, I mean, I think they had him sign that extension before he even made his big league debut, which was even more wild. So that's what's making it so weird about the Red Sox, is because it's like, well, it doesn't really matter because you've shown that you're going to give these guys deals before arbitration anyways. So you're going to get past that service time buffer. So with Roman Anthony, that's what I think makes it so strange, because it's like this is a guy that I think really could create a lot of excitement, not only in Boston, but for baseball fans all around the country. And if you truly think that he is, a cornerstone power piece in the middle of your lineup for the next 10 years, why wouldn't you just do what you did with Christian Campbell with Roman Anthony? I mean, I know they're much different players. I think the strikeouts is really an issue that they're trying to work through at the AAA level with Anthony, but I think he's just always going to be that kind of hitter. Like he's a high output, high strikeout type of middle of the order guy. That's the kind of hitter that you bought whenever you drafted him. Mm-hmm. So it's even more curious, I think, that it's Boston for that reason, for mine, than it is anything else, because it's like, well, you've already shown that you're going to give these guys long-term deals that goes past their arbitration period anyways. But with him, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think bring him up and let him play.
Are they perhaps trying that? Are there contract negotiations going on in the background
Could
right
be,
now?
Yeah.
If we do call this guy up and he hits, 4 home runs in his first week in the big leagues, that's an extra 0. Whereas, like, we're putting a bit of paper in front of him right now saying, like, this could be as good as it gets, kid. You should take it. Don't be surprised, I guess, if he signs a deal like that, gets called up in the next week, similar to the Campbell thing, like you're kind of saying, because they've clearly got sort of form for that. That's their approach to this sort of thing. It could be part of their sort of leverage to shoehorn, another sort of team-friendly deal onto the roster.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. And, not letting it play out in the media like my favorite rugby league team tends to make every single one of their contract negotiations play out in the media is smart. So you're right. It very well could be that that's what happened. It is what's happening in the next couple of weeks. It comes out that Roman Anthony signed a deal, and we see him in the big leagues, and we get to see him hit 500-foot taters all summer long. How good would that be?
Yeah, Roman Empire. I'm ready.
The Roman Empire. Well, if you didn't join us on Thursday, Eric and Spoon were on fire with their tips. No Eric on this episode, but Spoon will give us his best for the week. We'll step aside momentarily and be back in just a moment. Time now for Spoon's picks for the upcoming week. The boys were on fire on the weekend pickoff. Combined, got wins up for about 2.5 units profit, I believe. So pays to follow the boys. Spoon, what have you got for the listeners this week?
This one I'm actually really excited about. Those who have listened for, probably 6 to 8 weeks now will have heard me drop a name a few times throughout the course of the year that I'm super excited to see. He makes his season debut tomorrow. He only pitched a few games last year. I still think he's one of the most exciting pitching prospects in all of baseball. He's probably not technically a prospect anymore, but for the Miami Marlins tomorrow, Eury Perez makes his season debut, and I just love everything about the way this guy pitches. I backed him on debut now, which I think was like a couple of years ago, and he's just had some injury issues that have kind of slowed him down, but he has maybe one of the most electric fastballs I've seen, and I'm really excited to see what he looks like tomorrow, and he gets a nice matchup against the Pirates. Now, having a look at sort of lines across different books, this is a classic example of we've got no idea what to expect as far as pitch count, but also like where he's at right now. So some books have just not even put out lines. Our trusty friends at Sportsbet will always put out lines. And what they've also put out is player performance doubles. Where I really like it tomorrow is just looking at Yuri Perez for 5 strikeouts and the Marlins to win. You're looking at $3 right now. If he's come back anything close to the guy I think he is, and it's worth noting, they gave him a lot of rehab starts. Like I think he's had like 6, 7, 8 rehab starts. He's basically almost been pitching like a full season as it's gone, making these rehab starts. So I'm not expecting some kind of 40 or 50 pitch outing. I think it's going to be in the 70 to 80 range. And if you're in the 70 to 80 range with the stuff that I think he's got, 5 strikeouts is kind of no issue. Where the Marlins have been quite solid this year is it on the rare occasion that they do get sort of 5, 6 innings, or even 5 it might be tomorrow from a starting pitcher, they're actually going okay at winning the game the rest of the way. Their issues have been some of the disastrous starts from the likes of sort of Sandy Alcantara, or and I can name another guy because I think I backed him a couple of times, Edward Cabrera, where they're getting like 1 or 2 awful 6, 7 run innings, they're never in the game from there. I think we're going to see a pretty nice start from a Yuri Perez tomorrow. It's a guy, like I said, I've got a lot of belief in. So 5 strikeouts and the Marlins to win at $3. There's nice value taking some of those top ups. I'm not going to do it for the pod, but I might invest that way myself, just because if he's on and he goes above and beyond that sort of pitch expectation, then his tally could be anything. But at the 5 mark with the win at 3s, that's a way I'm happy to play, and a guy I'll probably be sticking with over the coming starts and the coming weeks, because he's definitely a bright spot for that Marlins side. Have you got any thoughts on that before I jump onto Wednesday? Or
yeah, well, I mean, he is exciting, right? And this is another one that I can't remember why this came across my desk, but it did. Just the amount of rehab starts that they were giving him, and I guess just because he's playing for a Marlins team, it's not really fighting for anything. It doesn't make sense to rush him along, but he is one that we're not talking about in like the same sort of breath as like a Paul Skeens or some of these really young hotshot pitchers. I think because we haven't seen enough of him and he's been playing in Miami. Mm-hmm. But he's the type of guy that if he has, 12 to 15 really good starts in the midway point and back half of the season, we could be talking about him as a huge trade piece. Maybe not this year, but potentially next year. Because I don't necessarily think that he stays in Miami. So I'm really keen to see how he pitches tomorrow too. And I think that's outrageous value, because if he's going to throw 70 or 80 pitches based on the amount of rehab starts that he's had, I think the fact that you're getting 5 or more in a win for $3 is pretty good value. Because I mean, when you're playing the Pirates, you might as well, right? You might as well take the double.
Yeah, and look, this is his age 22 season. Like this guy,
yeah.
I mean, he had 2.7 WAR in his rookie season. He only got to pitch half of it, and he hasn't pitched at all since that 2023 season. Like this is, I mean, if he has those 15 strong starts second half of the year, like you're saying, this is a guy I'll be taking at 101s at the start of next year for the Cy Young, because I sort of believe in his stuff that much. And like you said, he's on nobody's radar. And when you're not on someone's radar, that's also always reflected in markets, right? Like you're never getting value going and finding like Paul Skeens strikeout stuff. That's just not going to happen. Once they sort of win awards or they're favorites for awards, that reflects in every single line. Yuri Perez's line just has crazy value right now, and I think it will over the coming weeks, especially like you said. No one makes as many rehab starts. I don't think it'll happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if his season debut is like 95 pitches, because he's stretched out enough to actually do that. So there's kind of nothing but upside. But even if we don't get that upside, I'm pretty happy to play that way at $3. And then on to Wednesday. This is an interesting one because it kind of impacts my D-backs. It kind of doesn't. The Wednesday's game between the Mariners and the D-backs is a really interesting one. You've got Brian Wu pitching for the Mariners, who's been like quite solid this year with an ERA just over 3. And, he's probably not getting enough respect as far as how strong a season he's having. At the same time, he's also not exactly like dominating either. Like he's got a strikeout rate below 1 per inning. He just seems to be kind of a contact guy who's been backed up by strong defense, and that's sort of reflected in a lot of the numbers. I'm not sure that's a great matchup against a team that makes really good contact like the D-backs. So I can kind of see, this offense that we just talked about for Arizona, who put the ball in play so much and are let down by their pitching. The other half of that matchup is Brandon Fort starting for the D-backs, and he's just been awful. And the peripherals actually suggest that this was coming for some time. His strikeout rate is shocking this year. He's not generating any whiffs. And that as Eric sort of showed us, it's effectively being called a yes hitter, that outing he had where he gave up 10 hits or 10 runs or whatever it was without getting an out. He did not back that up. The next start, he was sort of lit up again by the Braves, and that's ultimately where that massive late comeback came from, because of how poor he was in that outing. I don't see anything that suggests that's going to turn around either. And the Mariners are an offense that, you've got the league leader in home runs there in Cal Raleigh. You've got guys like J-Rod who are sort of constantly putting the ball in play, Randy Arozarena. I think we're going to see probably 9.5 as the total for this game, and I'm pretty keen to play that way given the upside for the offense, the question marks around the starting pitching, and most importantly, the secret ingredient, the Arizona Diamondbacks bullpen.